On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we're going to do an ultimate Eagles draft with the 2023 roster. Gino and I are going to build two teams from a very talented roster this season. All that and more on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers for making us a part of your day Monday through Friday. I'm Louis DiBiase alongside Gino Camilleri. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your team is the Philadelphia Eagles. And Gino, this team in 2023, we've talked about it a lot over the last few months after free agency, bringing back a lot of the veterans from last year, running it back to, you look at some of the draft picks they had. They absolutely crushed it. The trades, getting guys like DeAndre Swift. This roster looks primed to run it back in 2023 and try to make the Super Bowl. The roster might not be as talented as last year, but it's pretty close, and maybe the ceiling is even higher. So today, you had a great idea of we're going to make two teams from this roster where we're going to draft as if we're doing a fantasy draft, but we only have options from the Eagles offense and defense.
This reminds me of a young Gino Camilleri pretending he was Howie Roseman on Madden 04, Madden 06 for those who love Donovan McNabb, where you make a new franchise and you put all the players in the NFL into a bucket, right? And then you get to draft them all. But we get to do that with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's a good exercise, especially coming off of yesterday's show, where we ranked the guys of importance, the Jenga tower pieces, right? And it'll be interesting to see how we go because it's pretty wide open. We got two pass catchers, a running back, an edge, an interior defensive lineman, a flex lineman, two offensive linemen, and then two guys in the defensive secondary. So this is going to be positional value based. I think we're going to try to align it with what the Eagles do, but this is a fun exercise because the team is so deep, right? And it's great to see what we believe is the importance, which is aligned with what the Eagles believe is important as well. And unlike a team in 2015 where I don't think you could have ever done something like this, this team makes it interesting with the free agents that they bring in, especially a deep running back group, a deep lineman group, how talented they are on the O-line. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting because there's so many good names, and we'll see who comes out with the better team.
And I think it ties in perfectly with our conversation yesterday where we ranked the top 5 most important Eagles on both sides of the ball, on offense and on defense. And this exercise kind of doubles down on that and sees like where me and you think we'd go if we were rebuilding this team from the ground up, almost like an expansion draft. If we could protect certain guys, who would we make sure is on our team? And positional value has a lot to do with that. Age, production, all those factors go into it, as it does for any NFL team actually building a roster. So, Gino, that's what we're going to do in segments 2 and 3. We have 10 players, or I should say 1 and 2. We have 5 players in this segment we're going to draft and 5 in the next one, a 10-team roster for both. And so one rule we did make is we're not going to do quarterback because someone's going to get Jalen Hurts and the other guy is going to get Mariota. And as much as I love Marcus Mariota, that gap is pretty significant.
It's the ultimate going to be the quarterback every single time. Like you're playing in the backyard, all-time QB, it's Jalen Hurts, right? So we'll just pretend that we both get him. But you're right, Lou. It's like when they do the expansion draft in hockey, who are those guys that you are going to protect? And if the Eagles ever did, or if the NFL rather ever did another expansion draft, I think this is something that we would probably do in a future show to see what we believe when it comes to age, when it comes to contractual value, when it comes to overall team building philosophy, where the Eagles would protect those pieces. And I think there's a top. But then I think when we get into some of those positions where there's more flexibility, where it's linebacker, safety, corner, we might differ on opinions in some areas.
For sure. All right, Gino, this was your idea, so I think it's only fair that you get the first pick. So I'm going to let you pick first.
Gotcha. This might not be everybody's first pick, but I believe that the only way to succeed in this league is to keep your quarterback healthy. And the most important position for a righty quarterback is to have your blind side protected. You look at age, you look at skill, you look at the position. I think Jordan Mailata, you protect him all day. He's your 1-1. This guy can't leave Philadelphia. So for me, I'm going to get my bookend tackle for the next decade plus. Somebody you met today, I had to take him just in spite of you meeting him at the Eagles Autism Challenge, but I'm going to go with Jordan Mailata, number one.
For sure, for sure. And that was the same position, Gino, that I was going to go with. And the age part is a huge reason to take Mailata over Lane Johnson. And of course, Lane has gone back and forth every year, kind of like Jason Kelce with if he's going to play. But he did sign that extension through 2026. So I'm going to take the other tackle. I think the best tackle in football right now, regardless of what side he plays. Lane Johnson, he has not given up a sack since 2020. And as you mentioned, protection for a quarterback is so important. So got to take one of those pillars. I think they're deeper as well when it comes to the other spots I was thinking of was maybe edge rusher, defensive tackle. I think they're deeper there. There's more options. Whereas at tackle, it's Lane, Mailata, and then what? You're taking Tyler Steen. So I think both of us want those pillars at the tackle spot. So I'm going to take Lane Johnson.
I'm going to go to the guy that most likely would be rushing against Lane Johnson. And if you want to get somebody,
he was going to be my pick if it wasn't Lane.
I knew you were right on that area, but I was up in the air between pass catcher and this position. But I think this is such an integral position, as you saw his addition last year, Hassan Reddick. You get him. How do you take out those bookend tackles in the National Football League? Well, look at that film he put out against Carolina with Jordan Mailata, completely took him out of that game, rushed him into oblivion. I'm going to go with Hassan Reddick. He's young. You could still have him here for, upwards of 7 years. I think he's only going to continue to get better, too, as his pass rush plan, his arsenal continues to develop. Hassan Reddick, my number 2 pick. I'm feeling good so far.
So, Gino, we get 2 offensive linemen. Or no,
yes,
an interior, a tackle, and then a swing, we said, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I'm going to take Landon Dickerson. I'm going to keep building the offensive line. I think when it comes to youth and talent overall right now, he is the guy outside of Jordan Mailata. And I would take Jason Kelce if it was just a 2023 draft, but I think we're also thinking future for this. I kind of like the expansion perspective that we're taking. So I would take Landon Dickerson. He's got versatility too. Like, yeah, do you want to take a guard maybe with that second pick when it comes to positional value? Maybe not. But I'm thinking of it from a perspective of it's an elite offensive lineman that's only in his 3rd year, and he can play center and guard as well. So I'm going to take Dickerson and keep building up front. It would be, again, to be Kelce, but he's probably going to retire after this year.
Yeah, so now that we have 3 of the 4 linemen picked, I can wait a little bit there, right? And my decision's going to be tough because of that expansion element that we kind of added to it. And that would be such an interesting discussion if that were to ever happen. Imagine Jason Kelce is available for a young team in an expansion draft. You'd have to imagine that's their guy all day long, right? I think those are 2 great picks. You have Jalen Hurts behind those 2, you're going to be sitting pretty for, at least 5 or 3 to 4 years at right tackle. And then Landon Dickerson, really can do anything. He can move inside to center if you ever needed him to. Great pick there. This one for me. Right. Oh man, I think I know what you're going to do at one spot. So I think I'm going to zig when you're going to zag here.
Okay.
I'm going to go and I'm going to take Avonte Maddox. One, because I don't think there's too much depth there for expansion. And I think that slot corner position is so undervalued in this league that if you're going to go in with an expansion franchise and you want a guy that you could probably still extend and you still have him on a cheaper deal, the age element really is factoring into my discussion here right now. And I think I can wait at one spot when it comes. I'm not gonna mention the position, but Avonte Maddox, to me, out of that defense, there are some younger guys that maybe have a better upside in the long run. But right now, if it was a 2023, you take Slay, you take James Bradbury right away, in my opinion. But if I'm going to have this guy for at least the next 5 years that can cover some of those great slot receivers that are in this league and this division alone, I'm going to go with Avonte Maddox. Some people might not have expected it, but I'm going with it with my first defensive secondary pick.
I don't think anybody expected Dickerson and Maddox to be 2 of our top 4 picks. But again, we're thinking of this, it's not just from a 2023 talent perspective, but again, as you mentioned, it's a long-term look too. Like if the NFL had an expansion, who are the guys that we're making sure that we protect? So, Gino, you went with Maddox there. I'm going to take an edge rusher. I don't want you to double down and get Hassan and Sweat. So I'm going to take Josh Sweat here. I think that was the best duo maybe of pass rushers in the league last year. Josh Sweat is, to me, one of the most underrated pass rushers in the NFL. So give me Josh Sweat. I think I'm going to continue to build linemen up here.
I love that pick. And then I'm going to go with another position that I don't think people are going to expect as well. Jalen Carter. I'm going to go with Jalen Carter on the
I thought about
interior.
him over Sweatman, so I get it.
I was right there with Milton Williams, but right now, cost control, you have Jalen for at least 5 years. Milton, you're going to have to pay next year.
Yeah.
Still think Milton would be a good pick in this draft, but man, you're going into a draft and you're saying, I need generational type players for the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm looking at right now. Maybe I could have went him over Avante first, but I loved the taking away the pass position and then getting that interior rusher to follow it up. So I'm going Jalen Carter there.
All right, nice. We're building a lot of linemen. I think the only non-lineman has been Avante Maddox, your slot corner for sure. So I'm going to wait on one guy because I think I can get him in a bit here. So that's the other thing. We're playing each other, too, with this draft.
Exactly.
I'm going to go with Darius Slay. And I know that who knows if he's going to be here beyond 2023, but having a CB1 that can cover any type of receiver that has been an all-pro, Pro Bowler in 2 of the last 3 years with Philadelphia, didn't really show any signs of slowing down last year. He has the speed element. Having a coverage corner like that is so important to have an elite player like that at that spot. So positional value, production, I'm going to go with Darius Slay and try to build this defense up.
Yeah, like how long is he gonna be in the league still, man? Like that's such an interesting
discussion. But I will predict if somebody's gonna drop off at corner between him and Bradbury, I actually think it'd be Bradbury before Slay.
Yes, I mean Slay can run much better than James Bradbury can, so I second that pick as well. Yeah. I don't.
And again, some of it is me going forward in 2023, so some of it's a long-term look, but also I want the stars right now too.
Yeah, you got to have that instant impact, right? And
yeah,
I'm gonna go and get my guy. I couldn't make it out of this first round without him. DeVonta Smith. I'm going to get the younger of the 2 pass rushers.
I was going to
get the guy. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, see, this is what I'm saying.
I thought I could wait because for some reason I thought you were going to take Brown, even though Devontae's your boy. So that was stupid.
Brown is your guy. So I was thinking exactly that. So we had to play off of each other, but you still have DeVonta Smith on that rookie deal, right? And you're going to say, man, I can't live without this guy because I know I have him cost controlled. I know I'm going to get him for another deal, and I'm probably going to get him for his 3rd contract inevitably down the road. And he's one of the premier young pass catchers in the league, and there shouldn't be a discussion with the Jamar Chases of the world without DeVonta Smith being maybe the next guy in that discussion.
For sure. It's a great pick. He was going to be my next guy. I thought about him maybe even over Darius Slay. I probably should have since you already had Avante Maddox, but yeah, I mean, a guy in year 3 that's that good already at separating at the receiver position is massive. So my final pick before we take a break, I'm going to go with A.J. Brown. And it's for a lot of the same reasons you took DeVonta Smith. And yeah, he's older, but by 1 year, and he's locked up long-term. Look at the impact he made on Jalen Hurts last year. Give me A.J. Brown, pass catchers, elite at this position that can do everything in such a dominant way like A.J. So important.
And after I made that pick, you would got to be shocked or scared at the fact that I could have took him on the next way around, and then you're stuck with the rest of the group. But I think that's a great first 5. I end up taking DeVonta Smith, Avante Maddox. I got Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, Jordan Mailata. You end up right now with Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, and A.J. Brown. I think that was probably maybe the consensus at 8 out of the 10 and maybe a couple surprise picks, but we'll have a couple more on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe Jason Kelce is a name that people expected to be there that wasn't. But outside of that, I think definitely status quo for sure. So we'll continue this Eagles draft coming up next right here on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
The only thing sweeter than talking drafts and football is eating one of the delicious Built Bars, one of their many great flavors. And here at the Locked On Eagles podcast and the whole Locked On Podcast Network, we're obsessed with these things. As much as we're obsessed with football and every sport over here at the Locked On Podcast Network, we eat, breathe, and die by these Built Bars. I'm telling you, we've been preaching to go to Built.com for the longest time to get any of their original flavors. And now you can go into your local Sam's Club or Walmart. You go to Walmart, you can get a 4-box bar of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. If you want to go to Sam's Club and you have a membership, get a 13-bar box, stock up like me and Lou do, get brownie batter or churro puff. They're not just delicious, but they're nutritious as well. It's 100% real chocolate with only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. If you just need something on the run, something to crave your sweet tooth, something to help you get into shape for a wedding like myself, go to Built.com, Walmart, or your local Sam's Club today to pick up a box of Built Bar.
All right, Eagles fans, thanks so much for tuning into this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Shout out to the Everydayers Monday through Friday for making us a part of your day. Today we're doing an Ultimate 2023 Eagles draft. We're trying to build two rosters with this one roster we have because it's that talented, it's that deep with short-term stars and potential long-term stars. And, it's a fun exercise and conversation because there's so many different ways to look at this and strategies to take because we're kind of looking at it through an expansion perspective of who we'd protect and who we'd maintain to build the core long term, but we're also trying to go for it in 2023 as well. So we're trying to have that balance like teams in the NFL do when they try to build a contender for now, but at least for Howie Roseman, he's not the Rams trying to sacrifice the future for the now. He's trying to have his cake and eat it too. And I think that's the right perspective that we took in segment 1. So we had 5 picks there. We've got 5 more now as we try to build this team. I think the last pick was me taking A.J. Brown, so I believe you're on the clock, correct?
Yes, sir. I am on the clock, and I'm up in the air on this because we might be able to bend a rule at the pass catcher position. Maybe we could toss a running back in there potentially as a flex type of player, maybe as a quote-unquote pass catcher. But I'm going to go with the heart and soul. I'm going to go with the defensive line again. I'm going upside. I'm going cost control. I'm rolling with Nolan Smith. It was between him and Milton Williams for me. Right now, you walk into a franchise with Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, and Nolan Smith as an expansion franchise. Lou, we talk about this as if this were some sort of alternate reality, but the Eagles, in reality, have both of the guys on mine in your teams, and I still get 3 of them, and I walk away with Hassan Reddick, Carter, and my flex is Nolan Smith. I think you have leadership, I think you have youth, and I think you prioritize a position that the Eagles and the whole NFL is figuring out. Yeah, we got to have 12 of these guys if we want to win.
100%. So that was definitely a guy I was considering with this next pick. I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert as my second pass catcher. Get A.J. Brown, get Dallas Goedert. I'm going to take over the middle of the field. They're both in their prime, the middle of their 20s, locked up on long-term contracts. I think that's got to be the move.
All right, so I'm going to, like I said, I think we can kind of spin that pass catcher role into multiple different facets and maybe at a position that we haven't had, but this guy has had multiple 500-plus yard receiving seasons on top of what he can do in the backfield. I'm going to take DeAndre Swift as a pure receiving back. I think with his youth, with his ability to stay healthy, which most people don't believe that he does, look at the games. He played more games than Miles Sanders over the last 4 years or so, Lou, and I think a pass-catching back can ultimately pop off what your offense could be, right? Like, look at San Fran. When they added Christian McCaffrey, it didn't matter who their quarterback was because you now had this X factor element. I'm not saying DeAndre Swift is Christian McCaffrey, but I'm saying that teams took him in vein of trying to find that next guy that could play that position. So I don't see much value outside of the big 3 at the pass catchers, but if I'm going to go a pure pass catching back, somebody that I can line up all over and maybe even put in the slot a little bit, I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift there.
For sure. That's a good pick. I'm stuck right now because I feel like Jason Kelce should not go this long without being selected, but I probably only have him for 1 year. But I'll take that year. Give me Jason Kelce.
Wait, no, you already took your 2 linemen.
You're right. I took my bad. We're doing 3 defensive linemen. Okay, so I'm going to go with the defensive lineman, Gino. Give me Jordan Davis. Over Milton Williams. I like Milton Williams more right now as a pass rusher, but I'm banking on Davis putting all that athletic ability together to become that Dexter Lawrence, that Vita Vea. We already know that he has that run blocking, or I should say run defense prowess that we saw last year in the first 8 games of the season. He's a leader. I think that Jordan Davis can be a staple of this defensive line, especially in a modern-day defense that has a lot of light boxes and you go defensive back heavy. Jordan Davis is an extremely important piece of this puzzle, so give me Davis up front.
All right, so I have running back, a second player in the defensive secondary, and then another offensive lineman. I think there's a lot of flexibility in that defensive secondary, but I'm going to go into this season having 2 dynamic backs, one my primary pass catching back, but one that could also slip out there as well. But I'm going to say he's going to take a bulk of the carries for me. Kenneth Gainwell. I want Kenny G in my offense, and some might have thought to the other guy that I'm sure you're going to take, but I think just having that dynamic element, that explosiveness of Kenny Gainwell Memphis backs just transfer in the National Football League. And Lou, if you're going to re-sign one of these guys that's in this backfield, more than likely, I think Kenny Gainwell in the future has an extension in play because he's not going to garner that money that these top guys get. He can still do a little bit of everything for you. And could he inevitably phase out Boston Scott from that third, fourth guy and inevitably be maybe a 1B type of player for you? I think Kenny G can any day.
For sure. So we have 3 defensive linemen. I have 2 right now. I took Jordan Davis and Josh Sweat. You got both other edge rushers I wanted with Hassan Reddick and Nolan Smith as well. I could go Brandon Graham, but probably for 2 years, I don't know if that's the move. And then Fletcher Cox is still available, but I think I'm going to go Milton Williams. I'm going to get that other pass rushing defensive tackle that I thought took a lot of nice steps last year. He was buried in a 6-man rotation at defensive tackle, but down the stretch, he made some big plays in some important games, including the playoffs. I think Milton Williams takes another step this year, and maybe at the end of the year is splitting time with Fletcher Cox in that rotation.
You have quite a trio there too, man. It's like I look at mine and Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, and Nolan Smith, and then you look at you and it's like, oh, you got Josh Sweat, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams.
Yeah, I went 2 tackles and you went 2 edge.
Teams would love to have that though, Lou. I mean, how many teams would love to have those 3 guys in their rotation?
Sure.
I'm sure 31 other guys in the National Football League.
All right, Gino. So I think we have 2 more picks here each. I got to get another defensive back. And then we have a running back still, correct? Or how are we doing? Or are we doing linebacker? Or is that part of?
That's part of the defensive secondary.
That's what I figured. Yep. Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to go.
That's interesting.
What? You didn't know that to start?
Well, Nakobe Dean, definitely versus. I was thinking Bradbury versus Sidney Brown. Maybe even Kelly.
Okay,
Ringo.
So I won't snake him out. It was you can inevitably take him.
I wasn't going to take him yet anyway, but so I was just saying it definitely changes my mindset a little bit.
Yes, but I am going to go to the offensive line here, and I feel so bad leaving Jason Kelce off of this list, but if you're looking from a long-term perspective, and that's what the Philadelphia Eagles do, I'm going to take the guy that is going to be his replacement. I think Cam Jurgens warranted that pick, right? And you could say if you wanted the more tackle-esque type of player that you could have made the argument of Tyler Steen being that guy for you. But I need a guy in the interior. I got my bookend tackle. I need somebody that can at least give me guard flexibility and potentially be my center of the future. I'll take a young athlete that played big-time ball at Nebraska that was drafted and scouted by one of the best centers ever to play. Give me Cam Jurgens. I know it's not the sexiest pick in the world, but from a team-building perspective, I'm sure he would be a pretty high pick when it came to all the interior linemen in the National Football League.
Yeah, no, I actually totally get that for sure. So this one's tough. I think I want to see what you're going to do with that final pick. So I got to take a running back here. You already got Kenneth Gainwell and DeAndre Swift. Give me Rashad Penny in the backfield, and then I'll address defensive back.
Yeah, I love the idea of taking Nakobe Dean, but I also think that was a slip in the rule there. But you know that I love a certain position more than any other position in this world. Mm-hmm. Give me Sidney Brown. This is like late day 3 NFL draft, right? It's like I'm going to take one guy that might not be surefire, but I'm going to play off of his upside. I'm coming into this season with Avonte Maddox and having a young Sidney Brown to have that versatility there. I think you can make the argument for Nakobe Dean as well, but I'm under the argument that linebackers don't matter in this league, so I'm going to go with that. I'm going to take a safety. The Eagles finally draft one. I think it would be in spite if I didn't take him. I'm going to go Sidney Brown.
Yeah, I almost feel dirty taking Nakobe Dean. I feel like if it was an expansion kind of discussion, he would definitely be off the board here because he's someone that I thought was a day 1 linebacker prospect 2 years ago. He can play on all 3 downs. I think he can be good in coverage against the run as well. A leader at Georgia, one of the best defenses of all time, if not the best, and he was the heartbeat of that in the middle. But maybe we should almost address this more like quarterback, where it's just Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
and outside of Nakobe Dean, we're not going to talk about Nicholas Morrow when it comes to this discussion at all. So I'll take Nakobe Dean off the board. He would definitely be in this, though. Again, if there was an expansion, he'd be a part of this process for sure. But I'm not going to put him in here. I'm actually going to take instead of James Bradbury because I already took Darius Slay, so I have one veteran corner. I want a developmental defensive back. Give me Kelly Ringo. He's got the
Oh, great
traits.
mindset.
He's got the
Great
4.3
mindset.
speed. He's 6'2". He's only 20 years old. I can decide what I want to do with him at corner, safety, long term. I'm going to take a long term perspective here because I have my win now corner and Slay. Give me Ringo for Mr. Irrelevant for that final pick.
I think it's a great way to look at it, man. And I think this is a yearly event that we have to do. I think this is a pretty good
Yeah.
discussion from team building. And hopefully in the future, we get an expansion draft. But when it's all said and done, Lou, I end up with DeVonta Smith, DeAndre Swift is one of my pass catchers, Kenny G, Vontae Maddox, Sidney Brown on the defensive line, Hassan Riddick, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and my offensive line is Jordan Mailata and Cam Jurgens. You walked away with Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Rashad Penny, and Keely Ringo.
I like it. Two surprise. I don't know if it's surprise picks, but two guys maybe people thought would be drafted that weren't. Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. Also Brandon Graham. Three of those big four veterans they've had for a long time. Of course, Lane Johnson, though, went second overall to my team. But, again, it wasn't, if this was just a best players of 2023 draft, obviously those guys would have been taken a lot higher. But we were more thinking, again, this is like a actual roster building exercise, and the only options you have are from this 2023 team. So, and that way, I think it's actually fair that you took Cam Jurgens over Kelce because, again, Jason's probably going to play just one more year. Brandon Graham's going to play 1 or 2 more years. Fletcher Cox, he's on that 1-year contract. What's he going to do after this year? Not so sure. So definitely an interesting exercise to do. That was a lot of fun. And you're right. Yeah, we should definitely do this every year. This team has a fun balance, and that's what we'll talk about to wrap up the show is that this team has a fun balance of guys that have done it before and proven players. And this team was so good last year that, there is going to be a target on their back. The expectation is going to be a lot higher than they were even last year. Like last offseason, there was a lot of hype, but nobody thought they were going to do what they did. And so, Gino, this team, it's going to be different, but at the same time, Nakobe Dean actually talked to the media this week about this topic, about how he doesn't feel like they're going to be the hunted and they're still going to be the hunters. And I think that's right, because although those expectations are there and there's still a lot of veteran guys and players last year that went on that run, we've mentioned it a few times on the show since the draft. There are a lot of players that are stepping up in bigger roles that weren't really a part of last year's team. Mm-hmm. And even if they were on the roster, they were backups, Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis. And then you've got new guys like Jalen Carter coming in and, Nolan Smith. And Nicholas Morrow wasn't a starter at linebacker on that team. And all three safeties weren't a part of that. And on the offensive side of the football, you're going to have a Cam Jurgens starting at right guard. You're going to have brand new running backs as well. So you're going to have Quez Watkins looking to prove something in the slot or Olamide Zacchaeus. So, yeah, there's a lot of core pieces still from that team last year, and the bar is definitely raised. But I think they're still going to be the hunters. They're not the defending champions, so they don't have the target on their backs. And this team is very motivated with a big chip on their shoulder. So I like that Nakobe Dean said that this week. I totally agree with him.
Yeah, and there might be a couple teams like San Francisco that have a target on the Philadelphia Eagles when they play them. But you're right, Lou. Outside of the NFC, I think the AFC is still saying we got to worry about Kansas City right now, and we got to worry about cannibalizing ourselves.
Yeah, Pat Mahomes should be the hunted, not Jalen
exactly.
Hurts.
No, that's the exact perspective that I'm taking, right? And that's the sentiment when I talk to my friends that are fans of AFC teams, and I mean Buffalo in particular, right? They're not saying, oh, we got to worry about playing Philadelphia. It's like, no, we have to go beat Patrick Mahomes in a big-time playoff game, and that's still what it is. And I think Jason Kelce made a great point that they shouldn't be the hunted, as Nakobe Dean said, but he said, we're starting from the bottom just like everybody else. Why are you hunting us, right? Like, go focus on yourself, and I think that's the best way that the Philadelphia Eagles can think about it, right? That we all have something to prove, right? Like those guys that won a national championship at Georgia weren't on the Eagles Super Bowl team. And do you not think that they want to come in here and show that that just wasn't a college thing, that they can come in here and produce on this team?
And, that Georgia team won back-to-back championships. So Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, a lot of those guys, they know how to not let those expectations on the outside and that pressure affect them. I mean, when was the last time outside of them that a team won back-to-back national championships in college football? That's even in college football where it's easier for teams to stay good. That's not easy to do. And then you look at guys like Jalen Hurts and DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, the veterans too. That kind of stuff's not going to get to them like I think sometimes it did for the Eagles in 2018.
Absolutely.
Like when they came out Super Bowl champions, And there were these book tours, and I totally get why everything happened the way it did, but I think that definitely played more of a part than it would with this roster for sure. And I think Dean's one of those guys that is a reason that that's not going to happen. Is they're looking to prove something. Nakobe Dean last year was a backup that barely, if at all, played on the defensive side of the football. So definitely a fun exercise. Let us know what you thought of that draft and what you would have done differently or what you liked from Gino and I's picks. Who had a better team? All that and more. Hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase, and at GC24_football. That's going to do it for another week of shows right here on Locked On Eagles. Shout out to the Everydayers for making us your first listen of the day, Monday through Friday. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.